I thought it was exciting to hear more noise in the system, right?
Yeah, it's not just one toddler like throwing a fit. You know what I mean? Like it's all of them. It's an uprising of toddlers. Like they're taking over the nursery.
Yeah.
That's what it seems to me is like it gets some real legs when there's more than one school associated with. Yeah, Michael Alford and the board of trustees can have their meeting and that can get some publicity for 36 hours. But when you have 6 other schools joining the the screaming and it's not screaming as in it's a fit just to have a fit. Like
sure.
You're over here waving your hands desperately saying, we're trying to compete nationally. Help us out. We have to either get out of here or something has to drastically change. I don't think that's, number one, it's not surprising. And it's also not surprising. It's not surprising that Florida State would have that stance and Clemson would have that stance, but that other schools wouldn't join them. I don't know that this is sustainable. The ACC isn't sustainable when you look at what the SEC and the Big Ten are doing from a financial standpoint.
Not if you want to play big boy football. It's
right,
not.
Man. And you do.
And the thing is, though, and I keep waiting for one more thing. If Virginia puts their name to this, I think it's over.
You think so? You think Virginia's the one?
I think Virginia's the one because of the state politics and their connection with Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has already said they're in, which means they must have a landing spot. Virginia looks out for Virginia Tech. Remember when we did this the last go around? There are political partners, and they have strong representation in the state of Virginia. Virginia Tech does, even though they're the stepchild. Like in Georgia, for example, Georgia Tech doesn't have any friends.
Correct.
It's whatever's best for Georgia.
Yeah.
After that, Georgia Tech's like, By the way, Georgia Tech right about now is screwed.
Yes.
They're broke, and they have no landing spot.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there going, well, damn it, man. We lost.
Maybe Georgia will take care of them.
It's not looking like it. Georgia never has.
Especially the end of their fight song is to hell with Georgia Tech. That's the end of the University of Georgia fight song and has been for 100 years. I don't think they're going to – that gives the sentiment that they would not care if Georgia Tech landed in the AAC.
Yeah, so now you have real teeth here with 8 teams. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than that. What's interesting is where are they going?
Yeah.
Now you get into the question marks about numbers. Does the SEC want to add 2 more teams or 4 more teams? Does the Big Ten want to add 2 more teams or 4 more teams? The networks have to pay the bill here. It's not like nobody's going to take less money to add more teams.
Right.
So, if you're making $70 million per squad and you want to add 2 more, well, those 2 are going to get paid. Nobody else is taking less money for them to join. So you can't just willy-nilly say, yeah, well, ESPN will pay or, Fox is going to pay. Maybe. I mean, for who? What are they paying for? So I think it's interesting. You begin to speculate, who do they want? And I would say that, because there's 8 teams there. They're not all going to the SEC or the Big Ten.
Right.
Somebody's got to go to the Big 12. And who do you think are the candidates? NC State, Virginia Tech, Louisville?
Those seem perfect. Good.
Perfectly
reasonable candidates for the Big 12.
Well, where does Miami go?
Yeah, I don't know. And I was wondering about that, too, when it comes to – so people are going to think and I saw this on Twitter yesterday, that Virginia and North Carolina were who the SEC would want because it's 2 states they're not in, which is all right. That makes sense. Fair, whatever. They're not football programs. They never will be football programs. Maybe if you throw $100 million of SEC money, they would be.
They could be.
They would seem more of a natural fit for the Big Ten, quite honestly.
Perhaps. Yeah.
But what Florida State's leverage is, and has always been, is, yeah, maybe the SEC and Florida is trying to talk the SEC. You don't need Florida State. Look at us now. We run the world without Florida State. But as soon as Florida State starts flirting with the Big Ten and vice versa, then all of a sudden the Big Ten becomes a real player for they would be on even footing almost with the SEC if they brought in Florida State and Clemson.
They have a bigger national appeal, I can tell you that.
Absolutely. And to go along with maybe Oregon and Washington, all of a sudden the SEC is like, well, so they got Virginia. We got Virginia and North Carolina. They got Florida State and Clemson and maybe Miami. Well, that sucks. And that doesn't help us at all.
Well, and if they did that, they would have Los Angeles to Miami, to Seattle, to,
because the Big Ten isn't in Florida, and Florida's a huge, obviously a very populated state, and they would love to be in the state of Florida. Florida State is an enormous brand, one of the top 5 or 10 in the country. So it's the SEC might be like, it's fine, go until it looks like it might really happen. And I think most people watching this or listening to this, if they had their druthers, number one, everybody wants out of the ACC unless something drastically changes. And maybe this is all a ploy not to blow it up and start over and make it more equitable. If ESPN and the networks understand how unhappy these schools are and how unfair it is for the landscape of college football, maybe they do try to shift the finances a little bit. But why would they? They don't. They don't have to.
Yeah, I don't think fairness is.
Don't you think most people listening to this desperately want to be in the SEC?
Yeah,
if
I would
they
think
had
the
to
vast
choose.
majority. I've talked to a couple
Desperately
of
is
people
probably
today
too strong, but
that said, yeah, they desperately want to be at the ACC.
correct.
Then they would like to land in the SEC.
It's just more fitting of the fan base, of the region,
where we
and
are,
everything
yeah.
else.
It makes sense.
But maybe the only way you get into the SEC is flirting with the Big Ten.
Oh,
because I think the Big Ten would be idiots not to be banging down Florida State's door. The Big Ten should be offering to pay whatever Florida State needs to be paid to get them into the Big Ten. Because imagine Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Clemson, Penn State, Oregon, Washington. That is unequal with Ole Miss, Florida, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, come on.
No, it's awesome. I listen, all you do know, there's a lot of speculation, and we can all say, well, look, there are rumors that the Big Ten is doing exactly what you're talking about. There's also rumors that the SEC has a quiet deal with FSU and Clemson, noting to them, hey, guys, we can't talk about this. I'm not getting sued.
Right.
I can't talk to you. It's like yesterday I used the analogy of the married man going through a divorce, wanting to go on a date and saying, listen, I really can't take you on a date until this is settled.
That hits a little too close.
Sorry, buddy.
Good grief. Golly.
So, I'm just saying, there are situations where
I was pretty willy-nilly with it. I'm I'm not divorced yet, separated. Let's go. Let's go walk down the street.
Your ex is a nice lady who wasn't going to clamor for more.
Correct.
Based on your dating status. That's the problem. The SEC and the ACC, I don't think they're as close. I think there would be a problem there, especially because one of them is fixing to be dissolved.
Yeah.
And not matter. By the way, so you're at the ACC spring meetings and you're Jim Phillips. What's your job? Honestly, what is your job, Jim Phillips? What are you doing right now?
What could you possibly say to the Florida States and the Clemsons to get them on board? I mean, there is stuff you could say, but would it be real?
No.
Or it's just pie in the sky? We're working on some stuff because look, man, again, it might look like Florida State is being petulant. This thing is ridiculous. And the landscape of college football and college athletics from when this grant of rights was signed till now has shifted in ways nobody could have ever foreseen. And even then it was a dumb deal.
It was a dumb deal. But although at the time, a lot of people thought it was the only deal.
A stabilizing force, but then who knew that the SEC and Big Ten would be making 2.5 to 3 times more money per year than you would? It is unsustainable to want Florida State to compete for national championships and be a top 10 program if they are making $60 million less than Purdue and Vanderbilt,
Rutgers,
and Ole Miss, and Rutgers, and Tennessee, and Georgia.
Right.
Like Georgia has some inherent advantages anyway. Now give them $65 million more than you every year. Not only are you going to struggle in football, you're going to struggle with, as we see in all these other sports that you care about.
Yeah, and slowly but surely that's going to happen.
Yes, it is happening.
It's happening already, and it's going to continue to happen. And then you'll lose your coaches.
Yeah.
And it's not going to take long for Alani Alameda to get an offer she can't refuse from an SEC school that has more money than
Don't put that out there. Just don't put that out there.
Common sense, man.
Don't put that out there. She loves Tallahassee. She ain't leaving.
Well, I love Tallahassee, and I'm leaving tomorrow if their money's right. So I'm just telling you, we all do. Everybody does.
I don't know.
You are too, buddy.
Man,
you are too.
I wouldn't leave this. Are you crazy?
We'd find a way. We
finally got rid of Ira.
The show from wherever.
We finally get Ira out of the equation, and now you're going to bounce too.
So I mean, it's interesting. I'm glad that this continues to be a talking point. It's not going away. I thought, it was interesting at the start of the week, the stories we had on warchant.com was that Michael Alford was going to continue to be, for lack of a better term, boisterous and outspoken about the frustrations FSU feels and their plight in this conference. And the finances being the crux of the argument, obviously.
So could Phillips then, sorry to interrupt you, but you asked what he could say.
What could he say?
I mean, there is the distribution.
It's not going to happen.
The
Those other schools are going to say no.
I mean, then it becomes, okay, would you rather Florida State get more money than you, deservedly so, because of the eyeballs and the ratings? Or would you rather not there be an ACC?
Do you think
we've got to keep them happy? Well, I mean, that should be their goal. I know it's not. But Florida State makes the most money in this conference, and it is not close.
It is not close.
So it's crazy they get the same revenue that Virginia
Well,
Virginia Tech and Duke and
you
Wake
can
get.
say that, and that's fine. I agree with you, but the rest of the league who's benefiting from that is not going to agree with you,
Yeah, I
and they're
know.
going to say, no, what are you going to do about it? We
Yeah.
have the grant of rights. That's what their position has been. That's how we reach this
But
place.
then it becomes so and it probably is to the point where there's so much animosity in it's an antagonistic relationship that Florida State's everybody knows their goal is to leave.
Yeah.
So whether you placate them now or not, what does that do for you in the long run? They're going to leave the first chance they get. So I get that side of it from the Wakes and the Dukes of the world. But at the same time, you also would like to have a conference for the next 10 years.
They're going to say basically, why give them more money for them to then take that money and turn around and give it back to you so they can leave?
Yeah.
Because that's what Florida State's going to do. They're going to get more money if they can, and then they're going to say, what's the number?
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's your money back.
Yeah.
We're out. We want out of here. I mean, because long-term, the ACC is cooked. And I think that's the hard part. If you're Jim Phillips, what is your job description right now? Are you still scrambling to salvage this conference that you know is a dead man walking? Are you going to try to get as much money from the teams that want to leave as possible and spin it off into something else?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what that would be. A basketball conference solely?
What if he could convince Notre Dame?
Well, if he could
That's
have,
a
he would
game
have already
changer.
done it.
Well, absolutely.
And that was the promise
maybe
when Jim
this is
Phillips was hired.
Yeah, well, and that would really help. And maybe this is all boiling over into trying to get Notre Dame to jump on ship.
And I think Notre Dame has already made their intentions known. They screwed you when you had them. You did this gentleman's deal with them for some reason during COVID. Oh, yeah, sure, come on over and play in the ACC. We understand you don't have any partners. Nobody wants to play you, and they're all just sticking in their own conference because of COVID. We'll let you in. Come join us, with the understanding that when you decide to join a conference, it's going to be us and us only. What are we waiting on here?
Yeah.
It ain't ever happening.
Yeah.
They used you. Jim has not been able to make inroads with Notre Dame. I think he was hired solely to do that, to make the ACC relevant by bringing Notre Dame into the fold and his connections at Notre Dame. He never did it.
Yeah.
And then last year, he basically walked out there in the ACC kickoff and said, please stop doing what you're doing. It hurts us. Buddy, that ain't an answer.
Yeah.
The SEC and Sankey just put a gun to the back of the head of the Big 12 and pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
When they brought Texas and Oklahoma in. They assassinated the conference. It's done. They're not going to have mercy on you because you ask them, hey, it's for the good of college football. You've been saying that for a long time.
Nobody cares.
Does the SEC care about the good of college football? No, they care about the SEC. And the Big Ten, who was allegedly aligned with you in something called the Alliance, turned around a month after the Alliance was forged and brought in USC and UCLA and nuked the Pac-12. There is no loyalty here.